prior to this initiative, my comfort level with technology was pretty limited. I was intimidated by it. It was a sharp learning curve, and I was anxious about the learning that was required. As someone who's approaching the end of her teaching career, I was concerned about the amount of time it would take me to learn and to practice the programs that would soon become second nature to my students. And I can tell you that the time that I personally put into learning the opportunities through this technology has been absolutely worth it. I am completely a different instructor now than I was before.
I'm a dinosaur, a technological dinosaur, and I had just mastered the use of a calculator when all of this came down. I feel much more comfortable now. It's a logical process. Once you get past the frustration of something being unplugged or another switch being on, or the volume control of my laptop is in 4 different places, and any one of them could screw up my lesson plan. But frankly, I've learned to turn to my students, and everybody smiles and say, well, we'll get through.
I find that it's easier to do work with Google Docs and sharing, but there's a certain population of kids that I work with, students that I work with that have, even when they're doing a study guide or something like that, we usually put everything on separate pages so that they can access what they're working on. You know, if they've got questions, then they've got their reference material right next to them. So what I find on some of the assignments in the netbooks is that there'll be a page of questions. They're doing a project, a lab for science or something for global studies, and there'll be a page that has a project on it. They've got the questions that they need to answer, but then they have to access a website or another link in order to get the information they need to answer these questions. And for some of these students, that's really problematic.
The morning after the tsunami in Japan, we simply closed down the classroom and became a newsroom. And students opened their netbooks, and together we learned about the damage that occurred in Japan. Not only did it comfort my students to have this knowledge, but it was immediate, and the information was there. So there's no challenge that we're not willing to take on anymore.
There's always something else to discover. There's always something else to become involved with. For instance, we're learning to use film in class. Well, next we're learning to use green screen in class. So now we're going to be giving our presentations on the battlefield of Gettysburg. I mean, these windows of opportunity just keep getting bigger and bigger.
I think for right now, the greatest aha moment I have had is being home on a Sunday night, and I was grading essays. It meant opening my laptop and going onto Google Documents. And as I was reading a student's essay, they were viewing along as I was reading it. As I wrote questions on the essay, they responded and asked questions back. And I felt that I was able to give that student the type of attention that I was never able to give students in the past.
I think the research end of it is we have a much wider world to draw from rather than going to the library or using a textbook. The next piece is that when we use PowerPoints or some sort of presentation or whatever it may be, it's leveled the playing field of spiffiness. They all have access to the bells and whistles now. So that part of the equation is now out.
I would say, especially if you're a seasoned teacher whose exposure to technology has been somewhat limited, who perhaps attended school before calculators were even invented, it is worth the time that you invest in your learning to find a colleague who can work with you and be your teacher. And yes, it did take me a while to accept that sometimes I will rely on my students to fill in the gaps that I may have, and it's okay. They accept that. They want to help their teachers with the technology, but I would embrace it. It has, in the last few years of my teaching, I think these are going to be the best years I've ever had.
Go for it. Go for it. You have everything to gain. You'll make lots of mistakes. Hopefully you don't make the same ones twice. There are lots of rewards involved in it. That said and done, it's not magic. It's somewhat like I'm going to talk about art in America, and but I'm going to have to learn how to mix my own paint. We're starting at that basic level. It's more than just showing a slide. You're going to have to actually come up with a canvas.